Leveraging safety for better business. We're continuing our conversation with John, our industry insider, that put into practice the safety elements to actually get cost and schedule as well. Better business. Stay tuned next on the Big Safety Short. Welcome to the Big Safety Short, where we delve into cutting-edge strategies and innovation shaping the future of workplace safety in high-risk industries, ensuring we protect people, property, and the environment from serious harm. Welcome back to the Big Safety Short. Last episode, we were talking about values versus practices and discussing a lot of the issues around why there's such a disconnect. This episode, we're going to be talking about leveraging safety for better business and ending on more of a note where if you do this stuff right, it actually provides a positive benefit for everybody. So welcome back to the episode, John. And yeah, I would really like to start on that side of it. I know you've run a number of your own projects where you've been able to take all your past experiences with not only engineering, project management, but also safety. And yeah, I'd like to hear about that.
Yeah, so I've to be fair, I've run projects, run the gauntlet, small projects to, I'm going to say medium-sized projects. I've never worked on a Suncor big multi-billion-dollar project or anything like that. So I'd say talking from small to medium-sized projects, and I've run them various different ways. Where some projects I've run where I was running as the safety officer as well, which is now I look at it's broken. Didn't work very well. And I've also run projects where I've insisted on having a safety individual involved throughout the whole project, from scoping all the way to startup. It's more planning, a little bit more planning.
So more upfront.
So in the previous session, I talked about spending this front end time running in circles, making decisions, and then leaving all the construction to the back end of the schedule.
Right.
And it's all crammed in there. And so I've used safety officers, coordinators up front, and help me along those avenues, helping me build a schedule, helping me build on the engineering process safety side, I would say, as far as egress, and so that we didn't have as many change orders at the back end. We didn't have, I'm going to call it chaos at the back end. And it may cost engineering a little bit more, right? Depending on how much you get involved. It's all scalable.
And is that a barrier, the fact that it costs a little bit more up front, do you think?
Yes, yeah, it is. Because engineering companies are always gauged on percentage, how much percentage this project was engineering. And historically, when I go back 35 years, the average engineering company on a project was 10% on an average size project. The engineering was 10, 11% of the total cost of the project. Now, if you hit 10%, you're getting phone calls.
So that's the race to the bottom.
That was the race to the bottom that I was talking about earlier. Back to running the different ways.
Right.
If you and I showed it in our projects, if you do the proper planning, do the proper coordinating up front, so that when the field guys actually get the equipment, the schedule, the drawings, they can do their construction schedule. Right. And that should always be done, in my opinion, that construction schedule needs to be done by the contractor. The contractor and the supervisor on site. They're the ones on the ground. How would they lay this out properly? Okay. We give them here's what we want to do, here's how we want it to look when we're done. Help us out here. And so when you do that approach, they set up all of the plans, all the schedules, so that when their subs show up, They know exactly what they're going to do.
Right.
These guys are going to show up and they're going to grade this lease. We're not going to have electricians show up while they're grading the lease.
Right.
Right? So it's
That's the chaos. That's what happens.
that's the chaos. And if you don't do that planning, then you end up in chaos, and chaos is cash. That's my whole thing.
Okay.
When you end up with chaos out in the field, that's where the big money is spent on a project, on any project. The big money on a project is spent in construction. Everyone realizes that. So if you plan right,
Yeah.
and you have a systematic approach in the field,
Right.
then you don't have a whole bunch of people showing up and running in circles. You have the guys showing up and knowing exactly what they're going to do, exactly when they need to have it done,
Yeah.
and so that the next sub can show up and they're not tripping over each other. But as soon as you have different disciplines showing up at the same time, you end up tripping over each other, and then the supervisor loses control because he can't keep track of who's doing what.
You know, John, the dynamics in this is absolutely fascinating. I mean, I look at this because there's that old adage about how does it go? If you fail to plan, you plan to fail.
100%.
But the system is actually encouraging that from the engineering company because there's a race to the bottom, which creates the chaos where, you know, our contractors, you know, can make more money. And this all seems to work out very well for everybody, except maybe the project owner that's going to end up paying a little bit more. And it's not sustainable because at some point in time, somebody's going to die.
It fails.
Yeah, it fails.
You will have
Spectacularly.
you will have a failure of some sort. Either equipment will not work, someone will get hurt.
Yeah.
As soon as there's a chaos on site, your risk profile goes way up,
Okay.
in my opinion.
So you've had this great opportunity, again, as a safety manager, then you're running your own projects,
Yeah.
to plan at the very beginning, to do it, you know, say to do it right,
Yeah.
you know, and how did it go?
It goes very well. It's those projects become fun for everybody. The
Contractors,
including
chaos.
That's
they
right.
can't bill more.
Absolutely.
But I'd imagine that because now you've built it all in, they're actually being paid. They're not counting on the chaos because they're involved in the schedule, so they know exactly what it is they're going to do.
They can do their manpower planning. They know what's coming out, and then I, as a project manager, am not phoning them and saying, I need 2 more crews on site because we're running out of days. So they can, and then they pull from another job and they pull from this job.
Right.
Pretty soon they're
More chaos.
absolutely. We're causing them heartburn on other
projects.
sites. That's right.
And other owners.
Absolutely. So
Wow.
it becomes a hot mess is what happens. So they very much would rather have a proper plan put in place before they show up.
And certainly I think the workers, because they're having to adapt to this hot mess.
That's right. Well, then they know what they're doing tomorrow. Then the welders and the people on the ground with work boots know what they're doing tomorrow. But if you have a mess of a project, they'll show up and they don't know if they're going to work in this area today or that area today, if they're going to be moving dirt on with a shovel over here or welding over here. So they can't plan their day. So they start their day off confused.
Okay.
And it doesn't usually.
That's not a great start.
That's not a good day. Yeah. And it usually doesn't get better. The day doesn't get better. It just continues on.
So your projects hit that safety and the cost and the schedule the way it's supposed to.
Yeah.
I guess the downside though is that you had the upfront costs there to begin.
That's right.
And you had to sell those upfront costs.
Yes, that's exactly right. And so you will pay a little bit up front, and you will save a lot at the back end.
Again, I look at this as just common sense. Again, I'm using the word fascinating too much here. I can't imagine why everybody's not doing this.
It's I would go back to one of my previous comments where when you get up above a certain level in an organization, and those individuals have not done those tasks, so they don't know what it entails.
Okay.
Right? They just see.
But should they not rely on the expertise that is there?
Yes, they should.
But they don't.
Not always, no. No.
Okay.
No, because they have to meet their budget managers,
Right,
and schedule for production, and so they're sandwiched. They're kind of sandwiched, and so they have to make a decision. Am I going to make these guys mad?
Yeah.
Or am I really going to make these guys mad?
Right.
And I don't want to make these guys mad because life can get very uncomfortable. So it's easier to push it down than it is to push it up.
So again, I mean, you've demonstrated, and research shows this, like good planning, all the rest is actually better business. Safety's part of that, because usually when we have safety incidents, it's due to what we call sloppy management, what you're referring to as the chaos and lack of planning and things that goes on with it. It certainly seems like the stumbling block is the upfront costs that are there, which is initial investment. You can't guarantee me that I'm going to have all this other stuff that has something we call behavioral economics.
Yep.
How do we change that?
Accountability, better
Regulators?
Yes, 100%. Through
So people need to be told.
yes, and they need to believe what they're being told. Okay, so
There has to be skin in the game.
there has to be skin in the game, and the policing needs to be done. I call it policing, but because there's always somebody watching, whether it's the government regulators or those folks. There's always someone watching.
Right.
Now, where are they along the planning? Where are they along the design phase?
Right.
Right. I truly believe that they should be more involved.
Okay.
And at the same time, they need to know what they're getting involved with. So competency, right? Not saying that they're not competent, but they need to make sure that their competency level is there, and they need to be completely objective, 100% objective. And right now, I believe that there's a reluctance on their part to put the hammer down too hard on industry.
So we continue to get away with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that would make a big difference. We always hear of threats.
Yeah.
I've heard of threats for
35
35 years. And I can count on one hand, I should say, the number of times where someone's face has gotten really red by a nasty phone call, right? So that, in my opinion, the regulators need to get more involved and stand behind what they want to do.
So there's teeth in it. They actually enforce what it is that they say.
Yeah.
I don't suspect it would take much to wake up everybody, like shut down a site, or
Money talks.
Yeah, and everybody would comply.
And people get very excited very fast. And that's humanity, I guess. It's just like raising your kids. If you tell them, don't do that or you're going to get in trouble, and they never get in trouble, well, they're going to continue to do it, right? So
Carry through with it.
yeah. So in my opinion, I would like to see, and I know the regulators are, they don't have an overabundance number of people. I'm going to say they're understaffed.
Yeah.
But I think that would help.
Yeah, I don't know if they necessarily have to. If they just enforce the rules that are there, then they put the onus on the corporations to do things properly.
Yeah. At the same time, they have to be alongside to know what's going on.
Right.
They can't come in at the back end and say, "Oh, this is bad news here," right? So they have to be involved throughout as well. I think that if there were certain gates, and we do have licensing that we have to go through.
Yeah.
on most of the facilities, I should say, especially medium-sized facilities. There's always a licensing that we send in drawings, and they do go through them.
Yeah.
But after that,
Right.
you never really see them around, right? So once they issue the license, you're kind of on your own.
Yeah.
To do the right thing.
So again, John, we work in the EU and things as well, and we see the differences certainly between the UK and Canada, where our serious incident rates are, oh my God, 10 times as high as what theirs are. But in there, they have a very strong regulatory regime, and they actually enforce those things. So it can be done. Yep. It's just that people need to be told, there need to be consequences, and we have to follow through with it.
Yeah, so that would make a huge difference on the safety side. Let's pinpoint the safety side.
Yeah.
As far as even during construction.
Which they do in the UK as well, through the construction side of it.
Yeah.
So I think from what I'm hearing from this, John, is we have to be told, and we might not like it because it's not business as usual, but we will end up doing it right. We'll spend the money at the front end, so we plan properly, so everything else comes through, and everybody's encouraged that way. It's almost like, again, in the EU, it's against the law to take the lowest bid. Yeah. It's little things like that. So
yeah, and here it's a little bit different, right? They don't necessarily throw out the lowest bid,
right?
But they don't necessarily take it all the time, but I see it more often than not. When we buy equipment as well, sometimes it boils down to, well, this is all the money we have. What are we gonna do, right? So it can get very complex and nobody wants to say it out loud. That's the thing, right?
But it always comes out.
Yes.
And it's Westray. They didn't use mining equipment. They used farm equipment for mining because they wanted to save the money. So it always comes out, and comes out in a very spectacular.
And always at bad timing, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
After, you never hear about any of that stuff until somebody's upside down.
Right. Which I think is why, again, Canada, North America are such laggards when it comes to safety.
I believe we have good standards. I believe we have, as far as an industry goes, I believe in our standards. I believe in our codes.
Yeah.
I believe everyone has the best interest of the public and people at heart.
Right.
It's during the motion that things kind of get a little hazy.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
Again, we look at our stats, particularly in Alberta. 50% of employers aren't following basic safety regulations. Yeah, and it comes, like you said, we have good standards, we have all the rest. It comes back though, you can have all that, but unless it's enforced, unless stop just empty threats, do it, then everybody else will rate.
Absolutely. There's on projects, for example, years and years and years ago, I was working on a project, and the client came up to me and said, how come this facility is twice as much money as their competitor's facility down the road? Which was basically the same, very, very similar design.
Right.
And I looked at it and I said, well, they're just not following the same standards and codes and everything else that you are a good client.
Yeah.
You do not want to compare yourself with these folks down here. This facility is designed for probably 2 years. Your facility is designed for 20 years. There's a difference. There's a difference in materials. There's a difference in how it's put together. And there's a lot of that going on. There's a lot of that in our industry right now, where such and such company is building their facilities a lot cheaper than these guys over here. And I go back to
Is that within the range of what the standards allow? Like, it should be like, there should be this minimal standard. Like, we're not talking over-engineer, minimal standard.
Well,
Because I would hate to be the farmer that lives next to that facility.
Yes. Yeah, me too. Yeah, exactly. And it might not be, yeah. So there's a minimum standard.
Yeah.
And I don't believe it's in anybody's best interests to aim at that lowest standard. But it happens.
Well, especially if we're going to have to replace things and
That's right.
maintenance.
And the operators on site absolutely go crazy because they're left behind with this thing, this Frankenstein that they have to figure out how it works. And it's so different. So there's different standards for different companies, kind of. And that's an internal thing as well.
Yeah.
And in my past, one of the places I worked for, I asked them point blank, what are we designing for? Do you want to have this facility in 10 years? Or do you want to have it in 20 years? And I go back to the big oil companies, like the Shells.
Yeah.
I went out to a Shell facility on a tour. And it was a very old facility. I think it was 35 years old, maybe older than that. And you could eat off the floor. It was absolutely spotless. Everything was clean. And then you go off to another site that's only 6 months old, and you walk in and you have to have a shower when you leave because you're filthy.
Wow.
Right? And it's just a different corporate philosophy on, okay, just get this thing making money, or it needs to last.
So we know how to do it. You've shown that it's better business that comes in, and how we're going to get this across industry is minimal standards, needs to be enforced, and off. Complex issue, John.
And people could sit around and talk about this stuff for days and leave and still not know what to do. It's very interesting. It's the same kind of thing as, what does culture mean to you? I've had that discussion many times throughout my career. It's like, well, culture to me means this.
Right.
And you look over at your neighbor and they look at you and go, whoa, that doesn't make sense to me. Right? So it's the same thing with some of this is, how does this make you feel? What?
Right.
It's and no two people are going to have the same answer, unfortunately. So we have to rely on back to the regulators.
Minimal standards.
Minimal standards, yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, John, for the insights and all the rest. And thank you, everybody, for joining us on the Big Safety Short and this episode. And we look forward to seeing you for our next episodes. As we conclude the Big Safety Short, remember that prioritizing better safety for better business is a continuous journey. Stay informed, stay vigilant, and together, let's build a safer tomorrow.